Hello, ghouls. Welcome to episode 43 of the Shrouded in Darkness podcast, where we shine a light on the cases that the world forgot. This is your true crime obsessed host, Marlena, and I hope you're having the best day. So catch me up on all the things. Send me an email, reach out on social media. I might even give you a shout out on my next episode. But let me hear how you are, what we're doing, what we're learning, what we're reading. Alright, so let's jump right into things. We'll start with our sources. And today we have 3 podcasts. And Then They Were Gone, Generation Y, and Crime Weekly. I also did a good bit of digging on Google. Today's case takes us to Idaho Falls, where we will meet 5 individuals. We have Jessica Mitchell. She is engaged to DeOrr Kunz Sr. They are both 26 years old, and they have a 2-year-old son, DeOrr Kunz Jr. Going forward, he will be called Vernal, and the child will be called DeOrr. We also have Robert Walton, also called Bob. He is Jessica's grandfather, and she is his caretaker. Bob has to rely on an oxygen tank, so he isn't in the best of health overall. Lastly, we have Isaac Reinwand, age 35, and he is Bob's friend. He has actually worked for Bob in the past doing landscape work and such, and they've even lived close to one another for about 5 years, so they just kind of became good friends over time. The group of 5 were going on a camping adventure. This trip was a way to celebrate Jessica holding a steady job for 6 months, but it was also for Bob. They would be visiting an area that he frequented in his younger days, and now he could enjoy that same area with his grandkids. A quick note about Isaac. This would be the first time the couple and their child meet Isaac, and Isaac was invited by Bob. So it's July 9th, 2015. We're at Isaac's house gearing up for the trip. Bob is the first to arrive, driving his own truck with a camper attached. And then Vernal, Jessica, and DeOrr arrive together in their vehicle. The group of 5, they head out for the campground, which is about 120 miles away. This is around 6 p.m., although some reports say it could have been as late as 7:30 for the group to have left. They drive their 2 separate vehicles, so you have Isaac riding with Bob, and then you have the family of 3 in their vehicle. Along the route, they stop at a convenience store for snacks and supplies. It's late in the day when they arrive at Timber Creek Campground. It's probably about 9 p.m. at this point. They set up camp. They get a fire going, and then they go to bed. Bob sleeps in his camper that was attached to his truck. Vernal, Jessica, and DeOrr sleep in the back of Bob's truck, and then Isaac sleeps in a tent that he brought with him. Now, I can't speak on why they started their trip so late in the day. Every camping trip I've ever been on, we always make sure to leave out early enough in the day so that it's still daylight when we arrive. We take our time looking for the right spot, setting up the tent and the gear, just kind of checking out the area, again, while it's still daylight. But for some reason, they didn't get there till it was well after dark. Now, before we get too far, allow me to paint a picture of our location. This campground, again, it's Timber Creek Campground. It's very secluded. It's just super isolated. It's away from pretty much everything. It's mountainous. There is a forest of really tall trees, and there's even a nice creek that's about 15 yards away from the campsite. There's no bathrooms, no showers, no trailer hookups. There's not even a parking lot. It's as rugged as you could get, and the only thing that's actually there is maybe a couple picnic tables and a fire pit. It's so off-grid that even the cell phone service is spotty. In my opinion, this kind of sounds like paradise, just kind of being away from everything and everyone. So now we move on to the following day, July 10th. The group gets their day started with some breakfast, and it seems like DeOrr is being your typical 2-year-old. He's playing and kind of throwing stuff in the fire. He's just having a good time. This is according to Isaac, by the way. This is from his story. So the family of 3 decide to go to the store, which is about 30 minutes away. This just kind of reemphasizes how they're secluded. So they pick up some candy and feminine products for Jessica. An added note, there is a checkout receipt with a timestamp for 12:30 p.m. So this would mean they would arrive back to the campground around 1. So now this is the part of the timeline where we get some kind of conflicting information. I am going to I'm sharing Isaac's viewpoint starting off, because his story is the one that it never really changed. And I feel like that's kind of important. So again, from Isaac's viewpoint, everyone is back at the campground, and Isaac is going to show Vernal and Jessica some decent fishing spots, because he had actually been checking them out earlier with Bob. So Isaac is leading the group. He sees Jessica behind him, but Vernal and DeOrr, they've kind of lagged behind. The fishing spot is about 50 feet from where they set up camp, and it's kind of just down a hill. So Isaac shows Jessica the area, and then he kind of continues on to another area where he plans on fishing. A little bit later, Isaac can see Bob just kind of pacing back and forth. I guess it kind of was very indicated that something was wrong, so Isaac asks, "Hey, what's going on?" And this is when he learns that 2-year-old DeOrr is missing. And unsurprisingly, Isaac quickly jumps in to help search for the child. Now, this is where it really gets confusing. I'll look at a couple of the other viewpoints, and we'll start with Jessica. According to her, she and Vernal were going to follow Isaac to the fishing spot. And before they walked off, she asked Bob to watch DeOrr. She said Bob confirmed, and after 15 to maybe 30 minutes, Jessica and Vernal returned to the campsite, but DeOrr is nowhere. No signs of him, no tracks, nothing. They searched for maybe an hour and then called 911. Now, Jessica's call to 911 has been made public, and I've listened to it. We hear her describe DeOrr, that he's wearing a camo jacket, blue pajama pants, and cowboy boots. You can hear the panic in her voice. And during the recording, you can hear other people in the background, like at the operator station, and you can tell that someone else is actually talking to Vernal on another line. You actually hear the operator say, "Don't worry, Vernal, we have someone on the way." So now, according to Vernal, in his first interview with the media, he gets in his vehicle first. He says he was worried he wouldn't have good reception. Remember, I mentioned earlier that cell phone service can be spotty. So when he realizes DeOrr is missing, he jumps in his vehicle. He drives maybe 1.5 miles. He sees that he has 3 bars of service, so he immediately calls 911. And again, we can verify this because we hear the background noise of Jessica's call. But now, for some reason, Vernal's 911 call has never actually been released. And two, I'm not really sure why both of them needed to call. I don't know. I feel like maybe one person would call and the other person might keep looking. But either way, it's possible. Maybe just in their panic, maybe they weren't communicating. I don't know. Maybe they were both having bad service, so they split up to try and get good service. It could be a number of things. Now, before I get too far, I want to add Bob's account for the timeline. According to Bob, he doesn't remember being asked to watch DeOrr. He assumed that the 2-year-old went with his parents to the fishing spot. So now here are some important things to keep in mind. There is no available security footage at the gas station. There's nothing to really verify anyone's accounts for those couple of days. But not only that, there was no witness that came forward saying they had saw DeOrr. Now, during my research, I learned that Jessica does have other children. And some people seem to have a problem with this because it seems she doesn't have custody of them. Kind of makes you question her capabilities as a mother. Now, I'm going to assume these are all from a previous relationship, and I honestly couldn't find much else information. I mentioned earlier that there are some inconsistencies in some of the stories, the different viewpoints. And obviously this is important, the differing viewpoints and everything. Now, I'll remind you that we heard Jessica's 911 call, and that Vernal was also on the phone with 911 at this same time, but he was over a mile away, according to his story. But in Jessica's written statement, she claims that when she hung up with the 911 dispatcher, that she emptied her pockets into the passenger seat of Vernal's truck. Now, in a written statement, she's going to put everything, step by step, of what she did and everything of leading up to DeOrr being missing and what she did after. So that's one that's listed on the testimony. So because of this information that we have, we know that Vernal, according to his story, that he would have been 15 minutes away because it's such rugged terrain and he was 1.5 miles from the campground. And to further clarify, Jessica's call to 911 shows 2:28 p.m. and Vernal's shows 2:22 p.m. I hate to say it, but the BS continues. At one time, Jessica says they searched for an hour before calling 911. Another time, she says it was only 20 minutes. In one story, Vernal says that there was a beer delivery truck at the gas station that morning, that DeOrr was excited about the truck, and that the driver was really nice, and he let DeOrr sit in the cab of the truck. But then we learned that there was no delivery of beer in that area. We'll get more into this, but there's a private investigator that gets involved, and he reaches out to the local driver of that area and questions him about the whole scenario. Well, the guy confirmed that he'd never been in that vicinity, and even if he had been, he would have never let a child sit in his truck because that's a firing offense. So now let's look at the investigation side of things. We already know they both called 911 just before 2:30. So now we're at the scene. Police find no signs of foul play. Nothing to indicate that something bad happened. No blood, no drag marks, no pieces of clothing, absolutely nothing. Now, according to Vernal, a couple items were left at the campsite. And these are items that DeOrr never went anywhere without, like a blanket and a stuffed animal. All 4 adults are questioned. Obviously, they're all 4 there at the scene. There are several searches conducted over the next few weeks. We go by foot, horseback, ATV, helicopter, drones. Canines and cadaver dogs are brought in. The nearby creek is searched and dug. Nothing. Still nothing. Now, I did read in a couple reports that the canine units did hit on several different locations. And this would be after they were given DeOrr's scent to track. So the areas that they hit on means that they could smell DeOrr. So those locations include a tree where a dirty diaper was put. It includes the fire pit, an area that was about 140 feet east of the campsite, and then an area that was 2 miles away from the campsite. Now, some of these areas were excavated and further researched, but it seems like nothing conclusive was found. In August of 2015, a retired U.S. Marshal, his name is Frank Vilt, he volunteers his time to assist the family. But a month later, he resigns and publicly states that he felt the family had been deceptive in their shared information. Okay, and then in November of that same year, so 2015, Dennis Kunz, DeOrr's paternal grandfather, he hires another investigator named Philip Klein. But just like with Frank Vilt, Philip feels the family is withholding information. He publicly states this, and the family fires him. Now, the parents go through multiple polygraph exams, and they both fail every time. They were actually in the 99th percentile, which means it was more than just a little lie. This was basically as bad as it could be. Now, in January of 2016, both Jessica and Vernal are officially named as suspects in the case. This is due to their inconsistent timelines. The polygraph results and the lack of witnesses. Around this same time, the couple break off their engagement, and then by mid-July, they are evicted from their apartment for failure to pay rent. They abandon their belongings, the police are called, and their home is searched. During the search, police find a camouflage jacket, one very similar to what Jessica said DeOrr was wearing the day he disappeared. Over time, 150 witnesses were interviewed, and more than 300 tips were followed. Let's look at some of the theories, and I would honestly love to hear your thoughts on these, or if you have any of your own. So some believe maybe it was an animal attack, but a lot of people don't feel like this is really a possibility because there were no traces, no signs. And I believe we can all assume if there was an animal attack, it would have left some gory evidence behind. There's a possibility that he was abducted. Now, this one is also hard to believe because of how isolated the campground was. Remember, they were away from everything, and someone would have had to have followed them, I think, to even get to there, or they would have to know where they were going. Also, with it being such rough terrain, I feel like one of the adults would have heard an approaching vehicle. The final theory is that someone that was there that day knows what happened and is choosing to hide it. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was intentional. It could have even happened well before the camping trip, and the camping trip was just part of the plan, like a hoax. I want to add that Isaac was pretty scrutinized in this case. He apparently has a criminal record, plus he was the only person there that wasn't a member of the family. So, and just bear in mind, he's also the only one that's been consistent with his accounts of the day. That his story never changed. Now, before we wrap things up, let's look at some details from later on in the case, all the way until today. We know the couple split shortly after the disappearance. Vernal moves to a different state around that same time, while Jessica moves away later in maybe 2018 or early 2019. They both remarry and distance themselves from each other in the case. Robert Bob Walton passes away in 2019 from cancer. And then in June of that same year, 2019, David Marshburn is a private investigator with the Search for Me Foundation. He joins the investigation. He brings in his own cadaver dogs. They alert to an area which may or may not link to DeOrr's case. The dogs are trained for human bone, teeth, and tissue, just to clarify. But he and his team, they also climb the nearby mountain, where they find an old fleece jacket. And from what they can see, it appears an animal was desperately trying to get to whatever was wrapped in the jacket. There was blood at the scene, but the DNA testing was inconclusive. Also, the jacket that was found, it would have been manufactured around 2014 or 2015, which fits our narrative. 2 years later, October of 2021, Jessica's mother sits down for an interview. She fondly remembers DeOrr and his smile, and she still hopes and prays for closure. To this day, no arrests have been made. The parents are the only named suspects, and DeOrr has not been seen, nor have any remains ever been found. The case remains active, open, and listed as an unsolved missing persons case. Now again, I would love to hear your thoughts because this one baffles me. We're talking about a 2-year-old child disappearing from an area that was 50 feet from his parents. And Grandpa was supposedly right there. No one heard any screams, no cries, no tracks, no blood, no signs of anything. And we're supposed to believe that he simply vanished. No part of this case is believable. And I think there are some major gaps in the timeline. If you'll help us share the story, let's get little DeOrr's voice heard. You can connect with us on Instagram, WordPress, and Patreon. Just search for the Shrouded in Darkness podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if there's a case from your hometown that deserves attention, send it to us. Tune in next week as we dive into the case of Ivy Unruh. Until next time, ghouls, remember, the truth is always hiding in the darkness.